Deep inside Athel, Loren, green-clad warriors mistily stalk through the wooded realms, hunting beastmen and interlopers from outside their xenophobic borders. Lightly armored but carrying deadly bows with magical arrows, the very trees themselves fight alongside the wood elves, with treemen, ents, and dryads racing forward to rip apart the enemies of the wooded realm. Hello, I'm Rob, and this is an army overview for the wood elves for Warhammer The Old World. In this overview, I'm just going to be talking through the army rules and the army units to give you a quick kind of idea of what it might be like to play this army. The wood elf playstyle is most likely going to be a missile-based gun line using evasive tactics and then countercharging with some big heavy hitters. This doesn't mean you can't build big blocks of some very scary melee units. This doesn't mean you don't have access to treemen and even mounting your lords on a giant forest dragon. This is just an overview at the start of the edition to get you into it. There's so much to deep dive for each army in the old world, and so it's just going to take some time to do so. I hope you really enjoy this video, and I hope it's exactly what you want. But if it's not, you can always let me know in the comments below what it is you want to see from content like this in the future, because I'm super keen to do it. Anyway, let's dive straight in to the Wood Elves. Let's have a look at the units you can take in your Wood Elf army. For characters, you can have up to 1 Glade Lord or Spellweaver per 1,000 points. You can have up to 1 Treeman Ancient per 1,000 points, and multiple Glade Captains, Spellsingers, Shadowdancers, Waystalkers, and Branchwraiths. For the core of a Wood Elf army, you must have 1 unit of Glade Guard. You can have multiple units of Eternal Guard, Dryads, and Glade Riders, and up to 1 unit of Deepwood Scouts can be taken as core per 1,000 points played. For special, you can have multiple units of Deepwood Scouts, Wildwood Rangers, Wardancers, Sisters of the Thorn, Wildriders, and Warhawk Riders. And you can have up to 2 units of Treekin per 1,000 points in your army list. For rare, you can have multiple treemen. For every Waystalker, you can have 1 unit of Waywatchers. And you can have up to 3 Great Eagles per 1,000 points you spend on your army list. It's time to get into the thick of it and look at the army special rules. It's the thick of it. It's like a wood joke. These are rules that obviously are on top of the universal special rules, which you can find inside of your big teal book. The first one is Elven Reflexes, and a model, not its mount, gets +1 to its initiative for the first round of combat. With a high initiative value that elves already have, this is an additional bonus, meaning elves are most likely to strike first in most combats. Some units are going to have the Talismanic Tattoo special rule, which means they have a 6-up ward save. Some units are going to have the Tree Spirit special rule. This means that units without the Tree Spirit special rule cannot join units with the Tree Spirit special rule. You also can't benefit from the leadership of units that don't have the Tree Spirit special rule. This is going to make picking who is your general and other things like that important, and also remembering you just can't put certain characters inside Tree Spirit units. Some units have the Tree Whack special rule, which is an attack that can be made in combat against a model that you're engaged with. The enemy model has to pass an initiative test, and if they fail it, they take D3 hits at the strength of the user, and you can't take any armor saves against it, although you can take ward and regen saves. And if they pass the test, then you don't get to tree whack them. Honestly, this is cool. I love tree whacking stuff. I'm going to tree whack everything. I'm going to tree whack you. I'm going to tree whack... It's cool. Wood Elves have a very cool and unique special rule called Woodland Ambush. This special rule allows the Wood Elf player to place a forest on the table after all other terrain has been set up. It can't be set up in your opponent's deployment zone, and it can't be set up within 12 inches of the middle of the battlefield. This is really cool for the Wood Elf player. They're going to be able to use that piece of terrain to block the enemy's line of sight and be able to move through it easier than their opponent would, and obviously feels incredibly thematic with how a Wood Elf army would play, or how you would expect one to play. Wood Elves are obviously famous for fighting with arrows inside forests, so it's unsurprising that the Wood Elf roster has access to its own special type of woodland bow. The Asrai Longbow has a 32-inch range. It's the same strength as the user and doesn't have any AP, but it does have armor bane and also volley fire. This does mean that the Wood Elf army roster is going to be able to put down a lot of small arms fire at a very long range. And if this isn't enough for you, you can also upgrade the arrows that the different units are using as well. If you take Arcane Bodkins, then the arrows that you shoot have an AP of 2, which coupled with Armor Bane means you can really punch through even the most heavily armored targets. The Hagbane tips make the attacks have poison attacks instead. In most games of the old world, there'll be multiple modifiers to your shooting. Therefore, you'll most likely at long range be hitting on things like 5s and 6s. Having poison is kind of perfect in that way. That means that even the toughest monster at 32 inches is going to start suffering wounds on loads of 6s to hit. I can see Hagbane tips being incredibly popular. Moonfire shot arrows have the magical attacks and flaming attack special rule. These will be obviously good in the right context and meta depending on what you're playing against. And if you want to block the sky out with arrows, then you can take some Swift Shiver shards. This gives the Asteroid longbows multiple shots too, meaning you're just shooting twice as much, but that is going to come at a negative modifier to your shooting. Or you can have True Flight arrows, and True Flight arrows ignore cover and also ignore the quick shot special rule. This means you're going to ignore a lot of the modifiers that are going to affect your shooting and also Overwatch much easier with your units. It can't be understated just how much changing the types of arrows that your army has is going to completely change how your army may play and how well it will do into certain matchups. And that's kind of half the fun. Turn up to a match with the wrong arrows and you could be in for a tough time, but turn up with exactly the right arrows and everything might go your way. Will you be on target? I hate that joke. I'm not putting it in. If you have a wizard with access to the lore of Athel Loren, they can replace one of the spells that they generate with one of the 3 spells from this lore. The first spell, Tree Singing, is a magical vortex spell, which has 2 versions. One cast on a 7, which uses a small template, and one cast on a 9, which uses a large template. You set it up within 15 inches of a caster, and whichever template you set up, that counts as a forest. This becomes dangerous terrain for your opponent. This is a really great ability, being able to block or slow down slow-moving enemy units and also block line of sight or at least create cover for your units is a great spell. Forest Walker is a conveyance spell and it's cast on a 10 at a range of 24 inches. You can choose a wood elf character that's wholly within a woodland terrain feature, and as long as it's not fleeing, you're going to be able to set it up inside any other woodland terrain feature 6 inches away from the enemy. I think this is again an incredible spell. Being able to move with such utility is really, really beneficial to wood elves or generally any army in the game. I also like the idea at the very last minute, a wood elf character is about to be run down in the forest and then whoop, just pops away and hides himself, saving you vital victory points. Flock of Doom is a 9-inch template weapon. Flock of Doom is cast on a 9. You take the small 3-inch template, place it over an enemy unit, and any models that hit suffer a strength 3 hit. You're already going to be doing a lot of range damage with a wood elf army, and being able to add to that with magic is always going to be good. Let's take a look at the Wood Elf characters. The first character we're going to look at is a Glade Lord. Glade Lords are not a frontline melee character. I think you would be able to build one, but coming as stock at toughness 3 with only 3 wounds and light armor, you're going to have to spend a lot of points on magic items to really up the survivability of this character. However, with the absolutely insane ballistic skill 7, I think you should think of this as a sniper character. Thanks to the evasive special rule, they're going to be able to move out of enemy fire. Thanks to fire and flee, they're going to be able to overwatch or like stand and shoot and then move. So not stand and shoot, but you know what I mean, shoot and move. They ignore cover when they're shooting, meaning they're going to hit way more effectively. They move through cover, meaning they're going to work very well with forests and terrain. And obviously they buff the rest of your army in having rallying cry, so they are going to be able to make it so that units that are panicking or fleeing are going to be able to get a second chance to rally. And they're an elf, so they have strike first. So if you do pin them in combat, then they are going to be able to strike at initiative 10. They also have a special rule called the Arrow of Kurnos, which at the start of the battle, if the enemy general is placed within 36 inches of you, then they're going to suffer a strength 3 hit with no armor saves allowed, but ward saves will be able to be taken. Just like all of the lords, you're going to be able to put a bunch of magic items onto these characters, and so we'll do deep dives on those in the future. But just looking at the rules of stock, this is a unit that wants to be shooting, moving away from your opponent, and keep doing that. This is going to be a nightmare unit to pin down, and it is going to cause you grief at range consistently. I think this will be super fun to play with. And if you want to make the character faster, you have a variety of mounts. You can take an elven steed, a great stag, a warhawk, a forest dragon, or a great eagle. The non-lord version of Glade Lord is a Glade Captain, and this is the character you can upgrade to be your battle standard bearer. You're pretty much always going to have a battle standard bearer in your force, and I think Wood Elves especially will take it. The Glade Lord has an incredibly high leadership of leadership 10, and the Glade Captain is still leadership 9. The Glade Captain, again, is not a model I think you want to see at frontline combat. However, you can obviously upgrade magical items onto these characters to make them more defensive, and with their high weapon skill and also high initiative, they're always going to be striking first and probably hitting their target easier than they are hit back. And I'll say this now before I talk about any of the other units in this Elven roster. Initiative is great because you strike first. That means you can wipe out the front rank of your opponent's units, meaning they can't hit you back. Again, deep dives on how to build the perfect Glade Lord or Glade Clapsin or Sorcerer or any of the characters we're going to see in this roster in the future. But for now, once you start getting your eyes on all the rules, I'd love to know what you want to build, what kind of combo you like, what mount you like, what magic items you want to put on those characters and why, because those things are just super cool and I love hearing about them. Two of the types of Wood Elf Mage are the Spellweaver and the Spellsinger. The Spellweaver, or the Lord level character, which can be a level 3 caster, meaning it can have 3 spells and cast at +3, can obviously be upgraded to a level 4. This is standard across almost all army lists. With 3 wounds, toughness 3, and no armor, this is a character that's going to be very susceptible to be getting hit unless they're buried inside of a unit. You obviously can upgrade them to have forest spirits, and you can spend 50 points in that, or you can even give them some magical tattoos so they have a 6-up ward save. But these characters are characters that are going to rely on you defending them not defending themselves. Spellweavers and Spellsingers have access to 5 different types of magic: battle magic, elementalism, high magic, and illusion. And of course, they can always drop a spell to take a spell from the lore of Athel Loren. There are loads of good spells from these lores, which are going to either add additional damage at range, which a Wood Elf army is most likely to do, or are going to provide support spells for your units in the Elven army. And your Spellweaver and Spellsinger can also be mounted. You can have them on an Elven steed, a unicorn, a warhawk, or a forest dragon. All of these obviously have different pluses and minuses, and we'll talk about them in more detail in the future. You can, in your Wood Elf army, take a Shadowdancer. In fact, you can take multiple Shadowdancers. These are frontline melee characters able to join a unit of Wardancers, but could even operate like mage assassins. If you want, you can really trick one of these out, spending up to 50 points on magic items and forest spirits, as well as being able to turn them into a wizard for another 35 points. If you do turn them into a wizard, they get access to battle magic and the illusion spell lore. But it's in combat where this unit is really going to shine. 3 attacks each, but with Furious Charge, going to take that up to 4 attacks at weapon skill 8. So these are going to even be able to fight Lord level characters. Their initiative is already high at 7, but obviously they have Elven reflexes and of course strike first. And they have inbuilt immune to psychology, and so you're not going to have to worry about fear or terror tests. But where this unit is probably going to excel a lot is putting it inside a unit of Wardancers, because when you do so, this unit is also going to gain access to the Troubadour of Loek special rule, which is just a series of special rules that you pick at the start of combat. This is a wicked little character. You can put inside a unit of Wardancers. Being upgraded to a wizard is awesome. Battle magic is a great spell lore. Absolutely brilliant little character, great lore, the trickster god. They'd be really fun to use. Another character you can take are Waystalkers, and these are a nightmare unit, and you are going to have so much fun playing with Waystalkers. Waystalkers are snipers. That's just the easiest way to describe them. They have the Hawk-Eyed Archer special rule. This means not only can they target characters where normally you wouldn't be able to target them, in addition, they can choose characters out of units, like unit champions. This is going to be a nightmare. If your unit has put a magic standard on a unit that's causing you a real problem, or has got a unit champion with a magic blade you just don't want to mess around with, this is going to really affect that unit. And with the fantastic ballistic skill 7, the ability to ignore cover, the ability to fire and flee, and the ability to be evasive, this unit is a nightmare to deal with and is going to keep sniping out all of your units. Obviously, it's going to be armed with an Aserai longbow, so you're also going to be able to choose yourself a special type of arrow. It is incredibly lightly armored. I think the best you can get is a 6-up save, but you can make it an ambusher and obviously spend points on forest spites as well as magical items. I can't be overstated again just how useful this unit is going to be inside an army. It's going to cause a headache for your opponent, and it's going to keep racking you up kill points very early in the game. And that's kind of what you want your army to do. You want to force your opponent or pressurize them to be constantly moving towards you, and this is going to absolutely do that as they're losing magic items and champions out of units constantly. Playing Wood Elves, obviously, you're going to want to try and take a big tree that's alive, casting spells and stomping the enemy, and the Treeman Ancient is exactly what you want. The Treeman Ancient is going to be a really interesting character to take on the tabletop for sure. Starts out as a level 2 caster, and you can upgrade it all the way to a level 4 caster. So already a monster that's going to be able to cast spells is really, really good. Base save seems pretty survivable. Toughness 6 with 6 wounds and has full plate armor, so 4-up armor save and regeneration save of 5+. In combat, it's not too bad. 3 attacks, weapon skill 6, strength 6. It's got magical attacks. And obviously, you're going to be able to tree whack some fools. It's also got terror, so it could potentially make units run away before even charging it. It's immune to psychology too, so you're not going to have to worry too much about those sorts of checks. And even if that wasn't an issue, it's a massive leadership 10. However, we do have a couple of issues. It's a tree, therefore it's flammable. And that does mean that if you do get hit with flaming attacks, you're not going to be able to make your regeneration save. Similarly, it's also kind of slow. Movement 5, and obviously it's not going to get many bonuses to charge. Fairly susceptible to artillery fire as well, with nothing to negate some of those multi-wound damages. It'll be very interesting to see if the Treeman Ancient becomes meta or not, but it is the Wood Elves, and taking a giant tree does sound very cool, so I'm very interested to know what you all think. If you are going down a wood-like army for your Wood Elf army, then a Branchwraith is a character you may want to put in, especially with a unit of Dryads. It's a level 1 caster that can be upgraded to a level 2, with access to battle magic, elementalism, the law of illusion, and also the law of Athel Loren. You can take some forest spites upgrades for this character, but it is lightly armored at toughness 4, so again, another character I think you're going to bury inside a unit of Dryads to buff them up. The character does cause fear, which is nice for being able to stop enemy units and debuff them, and also you've got a bit of regen, which we love as well. Overall, if I think you're going for a lot of Dryads, you go for some Branchwraiths, and then you build in an army along that route. However, I'm not certain that's playing into the strengths of everything you get from a Wood Elf army. Let's take a look at the core units for a Wood Elf army. You have to have at least 1 unit of Glade Guard in a Wood Elf army, and isn't it really cool that they're absolutely brilliant? They're a fragile, lightly armored, but excellent long-range missile damage-dealing unit. With those Asteroid longbows shooting 32 inches and their ballistic skill of 4, they're going to put some real hurt at range, especially thanks to all the magical arrows that you can take. You can also upgrade this unit really cheaply. For every 1,000 points in your army, you can upgrade a Glade Guard unit to, and I think most importantly, have Vanguard. You can also give them Fire and Flee, but Vanguard looks really good. Fire and Flee might work as well to get away from like fast units. Of course, you can give them a full command and obviously take a magic standard up to a whopping 50 points. That is for a core unit. Amazing. There isn't really much to say about this unit. It's going to sit at the back of the board for most of the game. It's going to rain down wooden death on your opponent. And you have to take them. But like, you're probably going to take more than 1 unit. You're going to take multiples. As a core choice, you can also take a unit of up to 1 Deepwood Scout unit for every 1,000 points in your army list. Deepwood Scouts are just another flavor of Glade Guard with a couple of special rules baked in. For only an additional 2 points per model, 13 points for the Deepwood Scouts and 11 for the Glade Guard, you get Evasive, Fire and Flee, Scouts, and Skirmishers. Skirmishers is especially good because as a long-range unit, when taking missile fire, they're going to be at an additional -1 to be hit. Just making, again, this incredibly lightly armored unit that much more survivable at range. But that's what they invented Fireball for. Just cast Fireball at them and just throw them into that dirt. Both of those 2 units are excellent. And while only core choices, even if limited, it's going to really start to define how this Wood Elf army is going to play. Eternal Guard are going to be a lightly armored infantry block. They're going to be an anvil unit for your opponent's charging units to crash against, hopefully keeping most of your missile weapon units safe. Toughness 3 with light armor. You can upgrade them to have shields, and I'd probably suggest that you do that. So have a 5-up armor save. Because of the low toughness, low armor save, they're probably going to take a lot of damage. However, they have a really high initiative of initiative 4. They have Elven Reflexes, which is going to have +1 to that initiative, and in addition, the Aserai Spear that they're equipped with adds another +1 initiative on a turn in which they're charged. That Aserai Spear is strength as user, so it's going to start out as strength 3, and it's got AP 1. It's got the special rule fight an extra rank, so you're going to be able to do an additional rank of attacks. They also have the special rule martial prowess, allowing you to do sporting attacks from units even in the flank and rear. So this is a unit that, even when it's charged, is still going to do a lot of attacks from a lot of ranks, no matter which side it's charged from, at a high initiative value of up to initiative 6. Even if it does end up failing combat and losing, it has a stubborn special rule, which is nice, means it's going to stick around for even longer. Obviously, you can upgrade it to have a full command, and you can also give it either the drilled or veteran special rule. With the exception of the low armor and the low toughness, kind of a perfect hammer unit that's going to be a real issue when you charge it, because it's probably going to do some wounds and is going to stick exactly where it is. This means it's going to be great for allowing your units to countercharge, or at least hold up the enemy so you can do even more shots from your missile weapons. Dryads as a core unit are very interesting and add a lot to what you want for a Wood Elf army. They're a skirmishing unit with light armor and regen, so they are going to be fairly fragile, but toughness 4, that's going to hopefully keep them around a little bit longer. This is going to be compounded by the fact that they're immune to psychology, and they also cause fear, so they're going to cause a real issue for potentially skirmishing or light units that are going to be approaching your front lines. They're also stubborn with leadership 8, so I think you can be able to operate them on their own out in front of your army, slowing the enemy down as you rain hot death on them from all of your arrows. There might be a build where you just have a lot of Dryads in a huge kind of cloud formation. I can't wait to get these units on the tabletop and try them out. But for now, they feel like they're going to be a chaff frontline unit that's blocking enemies. Our last core unit are Glade Riders. This is a lightly armored light cavalry unit that you're going to be able to use to screen either the front of your army or go war machine hunting at the back of the enemy lines. Obviously, they have access to the Asrai longbows and can choose any of the special arcane arrows. You can upgrade them, obviously, to have a full command, and you can upgrade them to have several special rules. You can have ambushers, drilled, or reserve move special rules added to this unit. Added to the fact that this unit is a fast cavalry unit with skirmishers and swift stride, and this is going to cause some real issues in the sides of your army. You're just going to use them to war machine hunt the level 4 wizards at the back of the board, and they're going to cause you a real nightmare. In the perfect situation, could even potentially be used to set up for some really nice flank charges to really run down enemy units. It's a really nice option to have in a Wood Elf army, but you're just going to take more of the archers instead. Let's move on and look at our special units. Wildwood Rangers are a melee infantry unit that are going to decimate enemy monsters. The major issue I think you're going to have is getting them there. Movement 5, strength and toughness 3, leadership 9, so nice high leadership, and they have a good weapon skill of 5. They're all equipped with Rangers glaives, and this is where it gets really awesome. This is going to take them up to strength 5 because it's +2 strength, with an AP value of 2, and they require 2 hands. So you're not necessarily going to be wounding some of the larger monsters on 3s, it's going to be more like 5s. But if you are attacking a unit that has fear or terror special rule, then each model gets an additional attack in melee, and it does multiple damage too, versus just doing normally damage 1. And then doubling the damage is just wild. However, toughness 3 with only light armor and the ability to only upgrade to having a shield mean this is also going to really struggle if they get hit first. But of course, they've got high initiative and elven reflexes, so they're definitely going to probably strike first at initiative order. And thankfully, nothing's really going to reduce how effective that is thanks to being immune to psychology. Are they perfect for every situation? No. Some enemy units might not cause fear and might not cause terror, and then they're okay. However, if you do get in the right situation where this unit goes into the matchup it wants, it's going to murder them, and that's awesome. The next special unit are Wardancers, and again, lightly armored, toughness 3, and no armor at all. A skirmishing unit with talismanic tattoos for a 6-up ward save. They have strike first, so they will, in combat at least, be hitting anything before they get hit first. And they hit so amazingly hard. They're just equipped with hand weapons, and they have 1 attack each. However, they've got a Furious Charge for additional attack. They can take an extra hand weapon for another attack. And they have the Dancers of Loek special rule. This is a special rule that when chosen to fight, they get to choose one of 4 effects to apply to the unit. If you choose the Storm of Blade special rule, then you're going to be adding +1 attack for a total of 4. At weapon skill 6, you're going to be hitting loads, and at strength 3, you're going to be wounding almost nothing. If you don't want quite as many attacks, but you do want some AP, then you can choose the Whirling Blade special rule, and that's going to be at AP 2. If you want the unit to survive a little better, you can choose the Shadow's Coil special rule to give them a 4-up ward save, and if you've already stacked some minuses to hit on the enemy unit, or they just have a low weapon skill anyway versus your weapon skill 6, you can choose the Woven Mist special rule for a further -1 to be hit. This is a unit that's going to be very susceptible to missile weapons, but once it gets into combat and it has the right targets to hit, it's going to do some amazing work in close combat. Sisters of the Thorn are a really unique light cavalry unit. Toughness 3 with 1 wound apiece and no armor at all. They do have a 4-up ward save thanks to their Daughters of Eternity special rule. This is going to keep them in the fight a little bit longer, but the main reason they're going to be around is because they're very fast. They have a super high ballistic skill of 5, and they have a 12-inch weapon called a Black Briar Javelin. It's the same strength as the user, so in this case strength 3, and it's got AP 1 with move and shoot. So this very fast unit is going to be able to move up the board and fire these javelins at unit and hit really well. The entire unit also has poisoned attacks. As if this wasn't unique enough, this unit can also become a wizard. It chooses spells from either battle magic or the law of elementalism, and cast spells like a bounce spell if you include a unit champion and a standard bearer. This unit will be great for keeping a character inside of it. It's fast and hopefully will stay out of the way of some of the major threats your opponent brings. But it is lightly armored, and I panic with units like this, and I think, what's it going to do? It's going to just die. But it's got 4 up. It's got 4 up ward save. It's tougher than it looks. It's got 4 up ward save. It's going to, if you roll those 4 ups, it's going to stay around forever. The next unit we're going to look at are Wildriders. Earlier on, we talked about our Eternal Guard creating an anvil so that eventually a hammer could come and smash into the flank of a unit and just rip them to pieces. Wildriders are a hammer unit in the Wood Elf army. They're an incredibly offensive cavalry unit that's going to do loads and loads of damage in melee. Fairly heavily armored for a Wood Elf army, being able to take light armor and shields. Toughness 3 and 1 wound. Again, this is a unit that hits and does not like to be hit back. But it's a fast cavalry unit, and it also has countercharge. Frenzy and Furious Charge mean it's going to be a unit that's going to be difficult to control, but when it does charge in, it's going to get lots of bonus attacks. And when it does charge, it's going to be using Swift Stride, and it's going to be striking at a high initiative value with its Elven Reflexes for additional +1. In combat, it gets to use its absolutely prodigious Hunting Spear, which is going to add +1 to the strength, making them strength 5. AP 2 with Armor Bane 1 for up to AP 3 and potentially 3 attacks base. Obviously, you can give this unit full command and a magic standard. Yes, this unit is going to be difficult to control because of Frenzy, but also when it does charge in, it's going to do an amazing amount of work. I think this unit is going to be especially good for countercharging units that try to charge your Elven gun line, or even to build an entire army of crazy Wild Riders running around and charging into everything. Warhawk Riders are a harassing skirmishing unit, obviously the ability to fly and amazingly mobile at movement 10. The elves on top are armed with Asterai longbows and obviously can choose any of the upgrades for them. I think this unit is going to see a lot of play again on the flanks or trying to charge into war machines or wizards at the back of the board. The Hawk itself, pretty decent in combat, so being able to harass constantly at the edges of the battle thanks to the long range of the bow, and then either charging into flanks to help with combat resolution or hunt war machines at the back, I can see little units of 3 Warhawk Riders seeing a lot of play inside of games. Rounding out the special choices for the Wood Elves are the Treekin. They come as a minimum unit of 2, and if there is a heavy infantry unit in this book, it's going to be the Treekin. 3 wounds apiece at toughness 5 with a 5-up armor save and a 5-up regen save make these actually survivable. They are stubborn at leadership 8, which is decent. They have stomp attacks and tree whack, and they have 3 attacks at weapon skill 4 and strength 4, so a pretty good frontline fighting unit, and these are all magical attacks. If you roll any 6s to wound, then your Armor Bane 2 is going to start punching through some armor, and of course, because they're trees, they're flammable, so their regeneration save can be taken away. I don't know if people are going to build big bricks of Treekin, but it is a lot of attacks from the front rank if you want it to be. And relatively defensive and tough for the Wood Elf book, I think they're going to pose an issue to some enemy units. But most people should be bringing some sort of solution for a big monster or something like that, and so I think they're going to be targeting the Treekin exclusively. Looking at our rare choices, we're going to look at the Waywatchers. Waywatchers are the elite of the elite when it comes to ranged missile weapons in the Wood Elf force. Ballistic skill 5, armed with the Asterai longbow and able to choose any of the special arrows. This unit is going to rain down arrows from everywhere, and you are going to be annoyed. This is a skirmishing unit that can scout. You can upgrade them to have the ambush special rule. They move through cover, they ignore cover, so they're going to be hitting things much easier. They can fire and flee as a charge reaction. And because they have the feigned flight special rule, that means they're going to be able to automatically rally at the end of their movement after they've fled. They're evasive, so if you do try to shoot them, they're going to run away. And even then, they're skirmishers, so they're another -1 to hit. And if you want some early movement, you can upgrade them to have the Vanguard special rule, and you can make them veterans. The upgrades on the special arrows for these are slightly cheaper than if you were to take them on your Glade Guard. And so the Wood Elf book might be about what's the best way to be points effective with the number of arrows you can shoot at range to really harass your opponent. Ignore cover is really great though, and that's not something you should sleep on with this unit. The Treeman is a legit monster to have in this army, and if you did want something to countercharge while you're running a gun line, or even multiple Treemen to run over and smack up some fools, I think the Treeman is very, very good. Toughness 6 with full plate armor and then a regen of 5+, but of course, Plus, it's a tree, therefore it's flammable, so you can have that regen taken away from you. It causes terror, it's stubborn, and it has 6 attacks in close combat. These are at weapon skill 6, but the low strength 5, which is odd. These are all AP 2, with Armor Bane 1, and they're all magical attacks. And to round out the combat profile, obviously he's got Tree Whack and D3 Stomp attacks. So I think on its own, a Treeman might be able to produce a lot of combat resolution, and because it's stubborn, should be able to stick in fights even if it doesn't. Terror is also a great special rule to affect the enemy units, but I'm a little bit concerned about these monsters that are a little bit slow. Thankfully though, the Wood Elf roster is a roster that is going to be shooting at your opponent a lot, and therefore they should be coming towards you, so you don't have to run across the board to hit them. I guess the real question is, would you take a Treeman? Lastly, in the rare section, you can have up to 3 Great Eagles per 1,000 points, and the Great Eagles are kind of perfect for exactly what you would want a single model base to do. They can fly at movement 10, and they have swift stride, so they're very, very mobile. They cause fear, which is going to be really valuable for what I think they should be doing, and they have 3 attacks in close combat, one of which is done with their serrated maw. This got Armor Bane 2 and multiple damage 2, and with a high initiative 4, I could absolutely see someone using one of these to charge into either war machines at the back or go monster or character hunting. Sure, a single Great Eagle isn't necessarily going to mess up a monster, but it might mess up a character. And most of the playstyle of this army is going to be just about removing small pieces from the enemy army and slowing it down. I think Great Eagles are going to be very useful inside a Wood Elf roster. That's all the units you can take in a Wood Elf roster, but this is just the very start of us reviewing the Wood Elves or any of the factions for the old world. We as of yet haven't looked at all the magic items, looked at all the different spell laws you can take and how you can buff up different units inside a Wood Elf army. What does a Wood Elf army archetype look like? I mean, right now, it very much looks like it's going to be a missile weapon army that's hiding at the back of the board. But I'm sure there are loads of combinations. I'd love to know what you're planning on running and thinking about playing with. I'd like to know Lord loadouts and Little Hero loadouts and all sorts of ideas that you've had for your Wood Elf army. Me and my co-host will be doing long, deep dives and tactica for all of the armies. And those will all be available on our Patreon, and eventually they're going to make it all to YouTube. So if you do like what you've seen here and you fancy supporting the show, you can obviously join us on Patreon, or you can just leave us a comment, like and subscribe, and tell us what you thought. I'm always trying to make better content, so if you can just tell me what you'd like to see from these videos, I'll try hard to make sure those are things you see in the future. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope you really enjoy playing with your Wood Elf army.